Have you back. Well, a woman is killed every day in South Africa. That's a reality, that's a fact. And now, not even homes are safe. But why does South Africa find itself in this particular situation? And what should we be doing to end this scourge? Let's find out from Bernadine Bachar from the Saartjie Baartman Centre in Cape Town. Thank you for your time, Bernadine, for joining us this morning, and good morning to you. I think women have come to a point where they not only want to talk about GBV, they want intervention, they want solutions, they want to save their lives, and they want, intervention from all stakeholders, be it from government or even from law enforcement. And that's my first question to you. What would it take to end the scourge?
Good morning to you. So what we're looking at the moment, we've made some progress in South Africa in dealing with gender-based violence. We've made some progress when it comes to legislative reform, but legislation alone isn't sufficient to address the high levels of GBV in South Africa. We need to go further. We need action. We need a coordinated response across all sectors, which is what the National Strategic Plan was designed to do. The challenge now really is implementation, and implementation at the most basic levels. So we need to start dismantling the social norms and perceptions about the role of women in society and concepts of masculinity that underpin GBV. And we need to start addressing toxic belief systems that are based on the patriarchy and harmful gender stereotyping. So we need to start really from the basics and work our way up. We can't address this fully with legislation. We need to start looking also at resourcing of CBOs, community-based organizations in our communities that are carrying out the really good work of trying to address gender-based violence.
Interestingly, when you raise the point around, implementation, remind me of a conversation, Nadine, that I had some time a couple of months ago, around law enforcement and why they aren't implementing, support when it comes to, survivors of GBV. And, what sort of came out of that conversation was, is it perhaps that some of our law enforcement agents and officials themselves still, are part of gender stereotyping? They come from communities where they're problematic, either it's cultural or traditional or even domestic norms that they bring to work, they bring into their professional lives, and thus can even conduct, their work professionally. How do we then start to address those kind of issues, such as those that I'm raising when we look at, for example, law enforcement?
That's one of our biggest challenges. Women in South Africa do not trust the police across the board. And we need to start looking at training our police officials. We need to start looking at training our court officials so that women, when they approach these people, are actually feeling supported and that they dealt with sensitively. That we really need to start emphasizing. We need to start doing the work from the ground up.
We've also seen that increase, right, Bernadine, when it comes to the increase in femicide and GBV, particularly in this pandemic. Is it fair to also say COVID-19 played a role whereby, victims were almost stuck or forced to be stuck in these homes with their abusive partners? Nowhere to go, no form of employment, no escapism. To what extent has this pandemic played a role here?
I think the pandemic definitely has played a role. There have been barriers to women actually accessing services, things like being confined with their perpetrators, unable to access transport, perhaps not being able to have data or airtime to actually access services. Also not having the traditional support structures around them. So we've definitely seen an impact that the COVID-19 virus has had on gender-based violence, particularly during the time that the ban on alcohol was lifted. We saw shelters in the Western Cape almost immediately starting to fill up. And then don't forget that the pandemic has also exacerbated unemployment. It has exacerbated poverty, both of which are drivers for gender-based violence. So there's definitely a link between them.
Right. The president's also committing there approximately 128 million rand, to the GBV response fund. Is that enough for you? Do you think the president, the government, the Ministry of Women has placed priority to what has now been named a second pandemic in this country?
We're not seeing any difference on the ground that we were exactly 2 years ago. So quite clearly, whatever's been made available is just not working. We really need to start properly resourcing the organizations that are doing the work on the ground with survivors. And we should also need to start looking at preventative measures. So at this moment in time, no, it's not making a difference. Adequate resourcing is actually the key.
All right, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you so much, Bernadine Bachar, for joining me from the Saartjie Baartman Centre in Cape Town.